Welcome to Inside IT Automation, a Scriptrunner production.
Hi everyone, welcome to our September conversation with Doug Finke, long-time MVP, and you're calling yourself an AI tinkerer, right?
Yes.
Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Heiko.
It's always great talking to you, and so this time it's really about talking. What's the latest and greatest in AI, and how that relates to PowerShell, of course. So also the plan is to show a little bit of the things that are possible with your module, with ChatGPT, OpenAI. Maybe we're also going to talk about Claude, maybe, because that's what I'm started to use a couple of weeks ago. And I find the results pretty interesting, I have to say, pretty good. I cannot comment on the API because I don't even know if there is one. But
There is.
Okay. So let's start. So what would you say are the latest developments that you saw since we talked, which I think is like maybe 3 or 4 months ago?
Was it 3 or 4 months?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so nothing's really changed in 3 or 4 months.
And the world is flat, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. I just wanted to, we'll put this up here to start with. If I'm going to show some things about my PowerShell module, just if you want to do an install-module PSAI, you're good to go.
Perfect.
And we'll get into a couple of demos. Yeah, so what's changed in the last 3 or 4 months? It's pretty, I know I haven't, and I know everybody, all the major influencers in the AI space and in software in general, we are astounded by the pace at which AI is coming out with new things and new capabilities, right from the large language models to the user experiences around it, the tools that are coming out, the companies that are coming and going. A company may see a gap they want to fill, and they start building it. They'll get venture capital, get millions of dollars. They'll jump into it for a few months, and one of the companies will come out with a new piece, and they basically lay waste to that new company. So it's quite amazing, a lot of risk taking. And from my perspective, we as PowerShell scripters, developers, and users of computers, it's time we need to pay the innovation tax, so to speak, right? So if you don't start jumping into this stuff now, it's really going to be much more difficult within the next 3, 6, 12 months. But as to the answer to the question of what's changing, so I think it was back in May, there was Google came out, had their conference, OpenAI announced stuff the next day, Microsoft did their conference, was mostly all about AI, and then Apple did a bunch of stuff a couple of weeks later, and they talked about how they were using OpenAI's ChatGPT and entered into agreements to bring that to the Apple platform. So that's interesting news. In the space of, for companies like OpenAI, there's lots of opinions on is OpenAI, should it be called closed AI, right? Because it's really, they don't open source what they're doing, but they do provide a lot of amazing tools. Some you have to pay for things like the API integration. You have to pay $20 a month for your ChatGPT top tier service, which I do. And Heiko brought up at the beginning, he brought up Claude, which is by Anthropic. And what's interesting about Anthropic is it was started by ex-OpenAI researchers. So when I look at it, they do have an API, but when I look at the tools and I look at the user experience, I see a lot of fingerprints in it from what OpenAI did. And I think that's great. And it's really good because it keeps both companies on their toes. And it drives Google, what they're doing with Gemini, and Amazon, what they're doing, as well as Meta and Llama. So every one of those have had announcements in the last 3 months. They're all feverishly training their models, meaning they're creating synthetic data. They're taking data from the internet. There's all kinds of questions about the legality of what people are using. Folks are scraping YouTube videos. They've been scraping Google and Bing and Stack Overflow. So it's just, we're in a brand new world. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits, and we're going to see how the lawyers shake it all out.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the, let's say, non-technical aspects. Like, okay, who owns the content that they all collected and they base their business model on, right? So
Absolutely.
probably
And
without even asking anybody. So that's
you put stuff up on GitHub, and it's open to the world, right? And it doesn't matter whether another person comes along, starts using it, and takes it in a different direction. All depends on the license you give. And AI, I don't think originally was even looking at the licenses, so it just scraped, pulled it in, and made it part of their training data.
Mm-hmm.
And those, and even if it was a license that was restrictive, AI was able to, the way they did the training data, they just ingested it and made it part of their models. So these are a lot of questions. I know you personally have, it's important that this is safe to use. It's important that we do it responsibly. It's important that people are protected as best they can, whether it be for code or for ideas or for art. And people who were journalists are having the same challenges. But I don't focus on that. I have very limited time to do stuff. So I focus on the technology angle.
Yeah.
And just to bring it back, I think, Heiko, you and I have talked. You're a drummer, and I was around when drum kits started coming into the world, and I remember I used to hang out with low-end studio musicians, and the drummers started complaining back last century. They're like, I'm not putting my drums on. I'm not going to plug in anymore. I don't want to be recorded. They're starting to sample my people's drumming and putting them in the drum kits.
Yeah.
We would sit there and go, what are you talking about?
Mm.
And sure enough, right? And that's
it's about adapting, right? But and the good thing is, so because you bring up this example, like there are still many good studio musicians who still have a job because they have because they're just good and they have a feel and they are creative and
they have the human touch.
And they're also mixing it with technology, of course. So,
which is the adaptation that we need to do.
Absolutely. So yes, and as we wanted to focus on the technical part in this conversation, so of course we have to talk about your module, your new module. It's called PSAI, as you just showed, right? So, can you just maybe talk about, what was your motivation when you start building it, and how did it grow to what it is today?
Sure. Love talking about that. Thanks for asking. So just as an opening, PowerShell, supercharged by AI, transforms everyday scripting into intelligent automation. It's enabling faster problem solving, code improvement, and data analysis with just a few keystrokes. Hopefully we'll be able to demo some of that. And I do understand there's a lot of people on the other side of that discussion who don't agree and have a different risk profile to using it. But I'm an early adopter, right? So I early adopted PowerShell when it was Monad back in the early 2000s. Going way back 100 years ago, I early adopted something called Thunder. It was codenamed Thunder from Microsoft. And it became Visual Basic. So that's how long. That's 100 years ago, right? So that's what I like to do. I like to get into new technologies and just play around. And in 2021, GitHub had this new thing. I don't know if they called it Copilot initially. I think they did. And you hooked it up to your Visual Studio Code environment. You hooked it up to your editor. And it was supposed to help you with suggestions for your code. So, of course, I got on the wait list. I got access. And I was like, wow, what is this thing? I had no idea what it was. I didn't, this was before you started hearing things about prompt engineering. You didn't really understand things about large language models. You knew it was a little bit of something called AI. And I know about AI from the AI winters 100 years ago as well. And so I turned that on in 2021, maybe earlier. And around 2022, all of a sudden, I didn't even remember I had it installed. And I would start typing code, be it whatever language I was playing around with or working in. And all of a sudden, ghost text would come up just from me starting to type the word, let's say, function in PowerShell. And it would start recommending names of my functions that were correct, or they were in line with what the file I was editing and the code that surrounded it. I'm like, how is this thing doing this? And then in 2022 at Build, Microsoft demoed a command line interface with Python, and they showed how you could type a pound sign, and you could say something like, "What's my IP?" and a pound sign being a comment, and at the command line, "What's my IP?" You hit a keystroke, and it actually came back and recommended how to do a web request to get your public IP, something we do all the time. And then it blew my mind because then they demoed it in PowerShell. I was like, that's insane. What is this thing? And I'm like, all right, time to put my early adopter hat on. And I went and found more details. They actually put the code up somewhere on, I don't know if it was OpenAI at the time. And I went and looked at the code and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Oh, they bolted the PowerShell interface on so it would work on top of Python. I have Python installed on my machine and of course PowerShell, and I was able to get it to work. And I was like, this is not going to work well for a lot of people. That, most people who use PowerShell are not going to use it on top of Python. So I started looking at the code and I was like, how do they do this? And I was like, oh, they're hooking into these REST APIs back into the server. I'm like, what if I pull those REST APIs out and I start doing invoke REST method with them? Does it work? Can I make it work? And it started coming together. And I was like, wow. So I went ahead and implemented a bunch of the functions in Python in pure PowerShell. And I had myself a working interaction with an OpenAI model. And I was like, this is insane. And then OpenAI in 2022 just started delivering. And I just kept trying to keep pace with what they were doing. And I started learning more and more about what is this new stuff called generative pre-trained transformers, GPT. And it was a whole new vocabulary. It's a whole new mindset. It's AI first mindset. Like, what is that? And how do I use it now? And who can I talk to? And I couldn't even find people inside of Microsoft to talk to about like what this does and how it does. And I learned a lot of stuff from folks on the X platform, right there. All the big AI folks were there. And what was really interesting, I thought, was some of the folks I connected with, they were unbelievably generous with their information. It's where I first learned about how models hallucinate, how to use JSON and structured data in a model so it limits the hallucinations. These people went on to places like Scriptrunner and some of the large companies that are actually informing the United States government about how to use AI. And I was interacting with these folks, and I was like, wow, I didn't know who you were. And they taught me a ton of stuff, and they were incredibly generous to the entire community. So yeah, I just went down the route, and then I stayed up with what OpenAI does, and I built out a PowerShell interface that works like the Python SDK. And the main reason I did that was because I didn't think the Python people should have all the fun. I was like, I want to have some fun. So
yeah. Excellent. So that was the first module, right?
I built the first version.
PowerShell AI, I think it was called, right?
You got it. Yep. Yeah. I built that one, and then in November of 2022, I think about that time, OpenAI had their first dev day, and they released a bunch of new cool stuff that I was like, wow. So I created a second module called PowerShell AI Assistant because they were getting into this assistant mindset. And I was like, okay, I got to do this separately. I can't, I'm just I don't know what it is. I don't know how to really use it. And so now I had two modules. And then at some point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to collapse these two, improve the whole thing. And I'm going to go forward with PSAI because it looks like OpenAI is going to settle on just continuously improving this. And that was in late 2023. And I think I made a right choice there. I predicted correctly because they are continuing to improve. I just released a new version of PSAI yesterday, 2 days ago. They dropped a new model. And the new model that OpenAI provided is 50% cheaper than what there is today. So basically, intelligence is the cost of intelligence is so inexpensive, you can't really even meter it. You can't really measure it. It's getting that in. So it's a perfect time to get involved with this to figure out how to use it. Yeah. And my PowerShell module gives it to you right at your fingertips in your console. You can expand your scripts to have natural language processing, so on and so forth.
Perfect. I guess that's the perfect segue to start showing a few examples, I would say. So I will bring back the screen.
Okay, awesome.
And I think the screen only, because I think that's the most important thing here.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, show us a little bit around and what people can do with it.
Sure. So let's start up with looking at something called the AI shortcut key, which is what I mentioned before. This is how I got initially exposed to this. So in my module, you can type in enable AI shortcut key, and there you can see it does a lot. Now, what can we do? So I can do something like, let's go with what is my, and what's cool is you can misspell things because this gets sent back to the model, gets sent back to the OpenAI model, and it will correct my spelling and then actually try to answer the question. Now, if you hit Control-Shift-G, right? So basically it went off to the model came back, and then I injected it into using, if you have PS Readline installed, which you should, it actually gives you the command, and I can press enter, and now I can see what's going on. I can do things like list processes with lots of handles. So I don't even have to give it a specific at this point. Control-Shift-G. Let's try that again. Get the right keystroke. How impressive is that? I'm very impressed. So so it just took that, sorted it, gave me the exact correct syntax. Now I can eyeball this. I've been doing PowerShell for way too long, and I can just look at that really quick and say that looks pretty safe. Yeah, and there you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really minimal prompt. I mean, it cannot be any shorter, right? And you get this is really cool. Yeah.
Exactly. And now this is already beginning to help do a bunch of stuff. Now watch it. So now what I've done is I had initially built an enable shortcut key a year and a half ago, but I've added it because of the changes with OpenAI. You can now have memory. So I'm keeping track locally of the conversation I just had. And I send that conversation back to the model each time. So now I just said list those processes. What if I say just by Microsoft? And we'll put that here, Microsoft. Control-Shift-G. So it remembered what I did. So because it has a memory, it has that context. And now integrated with the shortcut key with the PowerShell module, it went back and it said, oh, I know what you're talking about. And now I'm going to say, let me just show you the Microsoft stuff.
Okay. So this is like, so the data that you're producing is kind of stored in the session that you're kind of establishing in the background.
So the data is not stored, just my prompts. So when I said list the processes that are using a lot of handles, and then when I said by Microsoft, it said, oh, I know how. Oh, it's also storing the actual the response. In other words, the code that it just did. I'm also keeping track of that in the memory. So it's my prompts, but it's not taking the actual data.
Okay, cool. And this is something that was not available like a year ago or something, right? This is because OpenAI changed things in the backend, the way they work.
Exactly. But what was available is that if I actually said, list the processes, I would have to keep that prompt, do an up arrow or repeat it, paste it in again, and then say by Microsoft. But now we have memory. So you can do all kinds of things because of the memory capabilities, and I've incorporated that and enabled that with the OpenAI capabilities.
Okay, which is kind of much more like a natural conversation with a person, right?
You got it. So this is really bringing ChatGPT Web to the next level in your console. And because of the way the module works, this doesn't just work here at the console. I've given you an entire SDK that you can use in your scripts to enable it to have natural language process. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to some of that. But anyway.
That sounds interesting.
Oh, it's awesome. So now I can do something. We'll do it real quick, and then maybe we'll move on to a different set of demos. But show 10 numbers. Let's see what we get. And now remember, ChatGPT and AI is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So let's see. So that looks pretty cool, right? Mm-hmm. Now watch this. We'll say even. How minimal is this prompt? Even only.
Okay.
Now I'm just going to type in even better. One word, odd. Now, why does that work? Because it's keeping track of memory. Mm-hmm. So it knows my prompts and it knows the code that it responded with. Too cool.
This is really cool. So is this available throughout the session? So let's say I'm closing it, I'm coming back again, then that's gone, right? You start.
Always kicking the bar up, Heiko. I like that. That is what I'm looking into. I initially had that back in the day. There's a couple of ways to handle that. And in fact, the new assistant model from OpenAI lets you store all of that on the server, but I'm not doing it that way here. So I kind of put this out for now, and depending on how people's response, as well as feedback, that is easily doable in many different ways. And you can take a look at my code when you look at enable shortcut key, right? You can look at the code. It's up on my GitHub. It's when you install the module. You see how I implemented it. Take it and implement that piece if you want, or take it in a completely different direction.
Okay, cool. So we will definitely add the links to your GitHub repo to the description.
And you can look, I think I'll send those over. But yeah, and that's, again, if you do the install module on PSAI, you're up and running. You just have to get an OpenAI key and give them a credit card. Don't worry about that. There's no runaway things. It's out of the box. If you give it $5, when it runs out of $5, it doesn't go anymore. You have to manually say, I want to add more for my credit card. And if I ran this demo a few thousand times, I wouldn't even cost me $1.50.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that's what is necessary, right? You have to have obviously a ChatGPT account and an OpenAI account, an OpenAI key, and then you can start using it.
Exactly. And then back to your point about Claude, the same, my module currently doesn't, I'm working on making it work with Claude because they have a different API, how you do response requests. But the same concept, I have a sample of where I'm actually tying into Claude API, Claude Anthropic API, as well as Gemini from Google. They're all working off of REST API. So this is doable across all the large language models. I just haven't incorporated it all into one place.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Cool.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. So what else?
You want more? Sure.
Yeah, sure. Always.
So to begin with, we see how easily AI can be integrated into your workflow, at least this way. So now let's take a look at something else, right? And I'm going to do something. It's cat. I hope I have it here. There we go. Demo guys are good. So here I have a simple PowerShell script, right? Give it a 10. I set the variable to 10. I count backwards, and then for each number I do $n divided by $_, right? So if I run that, we see that we get an error, right? And that's because it at the end it says, okay, I'm trying to divide 10 by 0, right? Okay, so that's okay, no problem. Well, let's chat with our data. What does that mean? So now I can cat that file again, and this is part of the PSAI that I have. You can do chat, explain, and this is now your prompt. So if you learn how to do prompting, which is basically just text input, and having a conversation with somebody, I'm going to take that file, pass it up to GPT. Now this is taking that file, that code, and passing it up to GPT, and my prompt is saying, explain this. So notice how it explains what's in the code, right? Notice what it says at the end. However, dividing by 0 will result in an error. Oh, that's pretty cool. Well, let's come up and say fix. Now this is taking the code again, passes it up, and it gives me back code. Look how fast that was. Gave me back the PowerShell code with the correction. With a correction that you may or may not like.
Yeah, but this is amazing. I mean,
thank you. If this wasn't a family show, I'd say it's something else, but I apologize.
It's all good.
Okay.
I think I learned from you that people from New York are not afraid of using strong words, right?
Expletives are part of what we do. It's the only way we can walk through the streets in a good way.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome.
So now what's really cool, I don't know how much time we have left, but now I can copy this out and I can put this into my into what I'm doing, into my function. But what's really cool is that I'm adding, I'm not showing, I'm doing this more of a it is a PowerShell way, right? I've used the type system, the extended type system, to put the word chat on these kinds of things. We'll show a couple of more if we have time. And but you can now make this part of your PowerShell stuff.
Yeah.
You can actually
with a one-liner. I mean, this is like, I mean, it's
exactly. But you can also, so not only can you use it here, but you can actually take this concept and then develop your scripts around the concept so that somebody's typing stuff into a prompt, or maybe you're writing code and you don't want to sit and write the code. I could do dir star ps1, cat all those files and say, fix them if I wanted to. So it's almost like a code review, which you could do as well, right? So and that's what's cool about this. I'll just, like, as we're talking, I'm like, oh, let me try that. Do a code review. So this is also and look, I'm not even going to spell the word review correctly. And this just begins to plant seeds for your imagination. That's really the curiosity and imagination is what's key here.
And I think this, for me, this is one of the most important aspects. So it allows to be creative. And so let's say the time from your idea to actually have a solution is narrowed down to seconds. And it's true for coding. It's true, as you know, I'm into music. It's with creating music or images or whatever. It's really amazing. But you still need to have the people that have the idea. So creativity, I think in this case, in all the cases, will become even more important. And that's the key, Absolutely. I think, for all the people that maybe are still afraid of using it in the technical context, AI. But if you have an idea and you want to do something, AI is definitely your friend, right?
You can ask in the chat, you can prompt anything you want. So let yourself go wild. And it's tough. Like, I'm going to ask. So I start with an AI first mindset, which is, and it took me a while. Like, I would sit there and go, well, I'm going to think about this. I need to do this. I'm going to build this, put this part into the AI pieces or my other code that I'm doing. And I began to become very mindful of, let me ask ChatGPT. Let me ask AI what to do. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I can use this to brainstorm. And so now you don't even have to go up to a website. If you're a PowerShell person, and this runs on also Linux and Mac, you can actually sit here and do these kinds of things. And you don't even need to have code. You can say, now this is not going to give you a full chat mode. But if I do this, .chat, nothing like going off script, right? Now I can't go back and forth when it's already beginning to chat, but I have other pieces inside the PSAI module that make it interactive. So you actually have at your console a way to interact and communicate. I don't have to open up an IDE. I don't have to buy another Copilot tool. I can do this all this way, done. And what you get charged is it's a pay as you go. Your usage, it's a consumption. And again, it's like less than pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. And of course, you could also add. I mean, now it's the data is pretty basic, I would say. But you could take files, right? You could take to do whatever, do some analysis and stuff like that.
Oh, Heiko, you're too good. So let's do this now. So while we've seen code improvement is impressive, I think the real power comes when you combine AI and data analysis, right? So let's. I have a sales data in CSV, right? So it's a simple thing. It's got 4 columns: region, state, units, and price, and it's got some random data in there. So now let's do that, and we'll come up here and let's chat with our data. You want to do that? I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do units by region. Now, maybe you're not an OLAP programmer, you don't know dimensional analysis and stuff, but you can ask any question you want. This is how my brain works. I think about units by region, but you can ask it any way you'd like. Now, how crazy is this? So I asked units by region. It gave me a bunch of stuff of how it calculated, even showed me what it calculated. And if you look back, it's absolutely correct. And then at the end, it says the final units by region. Yeah. Let's take it a little bit. Crazy, right?
Oh, yeah. And then you can take it into a different format, maybe even.
You and I have talked way too much. So let's do top 3 states. and watch how quickly it comes back. So it figures out, takes all the data, and it walks you through like you just talked to your assistant. So I've just added an assistant for like 0.0000 penny, right? And it came back. I said, hey, what's the top 3 states? Go figure it out. Lists it out, tells me it's going to sort them, and then gives me the correct answer at the bottom.
Impressive.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Now, one last one. So now typically if we're doing this, right, we can, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, right, you may not know how to do JSON. So that's okay. Ask ChatGPT. Let's do a JSON format. See what we get. So it just converted it. I didn't have to use any other PowerShell. Now, the thing is that this data does go to OpenAI. My module also works with Azure OpenAI. So if you have your own instance in there, you have a more comfort that they're going to protect your data than OpenAI. I don't personally care, but you have a different risk profile than I do. But we get back to JSON. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's really awesome.
I'm going to kick it up one more notch. What we're going to do is JSON format, and I'm going to say no explanation. Right, we saw a bunch of discussion around it. Explanation, no usage, and you don't have to put the hyphens, but I like it. And no fence blocks. Remember, it wrapped it in three backticks with the word JSON around it, and that's typical. And I'm going to misspell it, and maybe we'll have to tweak this again. So it goes through, gets the data, and tells ChatGPT, and there's my data. We'll go one more. Now, most people are going to be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he did an invoke expression." If I get it right. Oh wait, that's all. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do a $R, right? We're in PowerShell. So there's the JSON. And then if you do know PowerShell, you can say convert from JSON. So now I have it in PowerShell, right? Yeah. So I went up, I took my data, passed it up to GPT, took it back, and then I converted from JSON because maybe I know that better than CSV. But this is the kind of hybrid interaction as we become cyborgs.
Shellborgs.
Dude, I like that. All right. I'm stealing that. I'm a Shellborg.
Please, yeah.
Well, I'll let you post that around first. Yeah, Shellborgs.
Let's use Delhi to create a picture on that.
Exactly.
I will do that afterwards.
Exactly.
But so that's really cool. So I think this really shows. I mean, as I said, the capabilities are endless. You just have to have the idea, the creativity, and I think I mentioned it a while ago where I had this aha moment where I thought about how to get a video conversation with a customer into a success story, where I just took the transcript, put it into ChatGPT and also Claude in this case, and it was in German. It came back with a great text in English. So, and it took me a few days to come up to think about, oh yes, I could do that. So this is what you mean with the AI first mindset, right? So this is also what I'm still learning. Like, okay, how could AI help me with all kinds of stuff? And I think for me, the more I do it, the more I see the value.
Absolutely, 100%. And when you're first exposed to AI, you may be reading too much stuff on social media and the news about how dangerous it is, or it doesn't really do X, Y, and Z. But you have to get your hands dirty. And the more you get your hands dirty, the more you begin to go, oh, what if it can do this and this and this? And a year and a half ago, I never thought to go, let me build something I can chat with my data. That's crazy. Yeah. And the more you use it, the more curious you become. The more creative it'll make you. And then if you have the AI mindset, you'll start to ask it about pretty much anything. I used to tell people on interviews over the last several months that I would wake up in the middle of the night and I have ChatGPT on my Android, and you can talk to it. You hit a button and you have a conversation. You say, hey, what are you doing with blah, blah, blah? And it responds to you by talking back. And I would get up and I would record and I would say things about something I might have been dreaming about, or I had an idea, and it would talk to me, and then in the morning I could review the conversation, right? So, and to your point about taking a transcript from a conversation or a YouTube transcript and dropping it into an AI product, doesn't matter which one, and then I can chat about my interaction or a YouTube that I was looking at. And I can ask deeper questions. I can even do crazy stuff like, hey, show me other YouTubes that are similar to this. So that begins to stoke the creativity and the imagination. So
absolutely. Absolutely. So I think these were really great examples. You think we should wrap it up here?
Okay.
Or do you have any? Do you have one more? Do we have the Steve Jobs? There one more thing.
I always have one more thing. So I'm working on a new piece which is not public yet. I'm working on PSAI agent, and this is building. Working on building autonomous agents, and now I'm not building this purely from me sitting around having a beer on a weekend. I've been looking at things like LangChain and Crew AI, and I looked at initially at like Baby GPT and Auto GPT. I've looked at AutoGen. I've looked at Semantic Kernel from Microsoft. Anyway, so you have a thing that you can do. You say new agent, get agent response capital of France, right? And this will come back and just give me an answer. But it gets a lot more fun and interesting than that. Oh, bummer. Oh yeah. So I can do something like, now this doesn't, if you say just get agent response, it doesn't remember what you said previously. You'd have to say something like, you have to repeat the question instead of what I'm going to show next. There's also another method that I have, part of the agent. And I can say, new agent, invoke interactive CLI, and I'll give it an emoji. So now you can see the emoji here on the left, right? So it's got a little map, and now I can say capital of Spain. But what's cool is it comes back, but I'm in a conversation almost like the shortcut key, but I'm not hitting shortcut keys. I'm just typing my prompt. And then now I can say France. And it remembers that I'm talking about capitals. And now if I type in the word Nordic, let's see if it comes back. And it should give me the Nordic countries and the capitals. Oh, and of course it's going to be, so there it goes. Nordic capitals. I was a little too ambiguous. Maybe this will be better. And then we'll take it one more step and then we'll be done. So that's what I had wanted. But now it gets really cool because I can say in JSON. And I'm having a conversation, and because of these techniques, it has memory, right? So it's passing the conversation back and forth so that it can actually keep track of what's going on. Again, I'm getting that in JSON, but I can also say in a table. And these are little tricks. These are tricks about prompting that you learn. Like, oh, and now I get it in Markdown, right? In CSV. So imagine taking something like, so I think this is leaning on what we saw earlier, and getting further insights of what we're doing. But it's all from a few lines of code, not even from one line of code. And this, again, becomes part of what, if you want, you can add to your scripts, which is what I'm doing. Yeah. And just to wrap that concept up, Microsoft and other companies have said that they're saying 3 years. I think it's going to be sooner. If your interfaces don't have this, people will think your software is broken.
Yeah.
Why am I coming up to your thing and I have to drop the box down and do this, and I don't want a search bar. I want to have this kind of interaction with the information you're providing.
Yeah, people will start to expect that as standards, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So
cool. Yeah. So this was like a little sneak peek to what's coming, right?
Yep. This is a sneak peek.
Excellent. So let me just remove the screen here, and here we are. Here we are again. So that was really impressive, and I think it's easy to start, right? So they need a module, the ChatGPT, an OpenAI key, and an open mind and ideas, and then that's it, right?
That's all.
That's all. It's not so much actually. So.
And you got to start. I think you got to. I know I keep pounding on it. I personally think you have to start today. if you don't, I know there's all that. Oh my God, AI is not going to replace you, but someone who knows how to use it, they're going to replace you. So it's, here's for like less than $1 with a bunch of, you can start experimenting it, and then you can go to all the Claudes and the ChatGPT places to take it further to improve your understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And having this kind of seamless integration from PowerShell into this world, I think for everyone who's using PowerShell, that's really,
even for people not using it. There are people doing this in Python that I've followed for the last year and a half. But yeah, being able to do this at the command line, and I'm not even going to talk about a couple of other ideas, but we can chat offline at some point.
Excellent. Yeah, so Doug, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot for the insights. That was really, really awesome. A lot of great stuff and ideas. So
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks to you again. And as Doug said, I think you should all start looking into it, because it's here to stay. That's for sure. All right, then again, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. See you next time. Bye.